Maya Thompson had never walked into a luxury car dealership before. In fact, she'd only ever dreamed of stepping foot into a place like this. The gleaming marble floors, the shiny glass cases displaying high-end watches, and the sleek, polished cars lined up like works of art, it all felt like something out of a dream. She was a simple woman, with simple dreams. But today, something inside her was pushing her to step beyond her comfort zone, to walk into the world she thought was out of reach. Today is the day, Maya whispered to herself, adjusting the oversized purse on her shoulder. She had worked hard for this moment, countless late nights, taking on side jobs, saving every penny she could. Today, she was ready to make a big decision. She was going to buy a car. Not just any car, though. She had her eyes set on a Rolls-Royce. It was a symbol of success, of making it. She knew it sounded crazy to most people, especially someone like her, a black woman from a small neighborhood who had never had the luxury of buying anything like that. But there was something in her heart, some deep belief that she deserved this. As she walked through the doors of the dealership, a rush of excitement mixed with fear flooded her chest. The moment the door chimed, a salesman, sharply dressed in a suit, glanced up from his desk, and his eyes immediately scanned her. He stood up, a forced smile playing on his lips. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said with a tone that was too practiced, too polite. "How can I help you today?" Maya squared her shoulders, trying to calm the nerves dancing in her stomach. She had rehearsed this moment over and over again, so she wasn't going to back down now. She smiled back and walked confidently toward him. "I'm looking for a Rolls-Royce," she said, her voice steady, but her heart pounded in her chest. The salesman's smile faltered for just a split second, but it was enough for Maya to notice. He glanced over her shoulder as if expecting someone else to walk in, someone who looked more like the type of person who could afford such an extravagant purchase. Then, quickly, he turned back to her, his smile returning, but it was strained. "Of course, ma'am," he said, his voice now laced with thinly veiled skepticism. "A Rolls-Royce, you say? I'm afraid those aren't typically in the budget range of most of our clients." He chuckled nervously, clearly unsure of how to proceed with someone like her. Maya's stomach twisted. She could feel the judgment in his voice, in the way he looked at her, as though she didn't belong here. She took a deep breath and forced herself to remain calm, not letting him see the hurt that started to rise in her chest. She knew it was going to be like this. Society didn't always believe that people like her could aspire to things like this. But she wouldn't let that stop her. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to back down now. "I'm serious," Maya said, her voice firm. "I've done my research. I know what I want, and I can afford it. I'm ready to buy." The salesman hesitated. There was a brief moment of silence between them, thick with unspoken assumptions and judgments. He glanced at her once more, then at the cars around him, and something in his expression shifted. Maya knew what he was thinking. He was trying to decide if it was worth his time to entertain her, or if she was just another dreamer who'd never be able to follow through. "I see," he said slowly, giving her an almost patronizing look. "Well, let's have a seat, and I can show you some options. Rolls-Royce cars are quite an investment, you know." Maya bit her lip, trying to push down the rush of emotions. She didn't want to feel small in this moment. She wasn't going to let this man define her worth. She was more than capable of owning a car like this. This wasn't about money. It was about proving to herself that she could do it, no matter what anyone thought. The salesman gestured to a chair across from his desk, but Maya stood her ground. "I'd like to see the car now, please," she said. There was no hesitation in her voice this time. It wasn't just a request, it was a statement. She knew she had to demand respect. She wasn't here to play games. He blinked, clearly taken aback, but nodded, standing up from his desk. "Right this way." They walked together to the showroom floor, where rows of luxury cars gleamed under the bright lights. Maya's eyes immediately locked onto the Rolls-Royce in the corner, its silver body reflecting the light, its intricate design shining like a beacon of success. It was everything she had ever imagined. She walked toward it, her fingers lightly brushing against the smooth surface of the car. It felt surreal. She had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, it was even more than she expected. "This one," Maya said quietly, her eyes fixed on the car. The salesman gave a brief, almost dismissive glance at the car, then back at her. "Ah, yes, the Rolls-Royce Ghost. Beautiful choice. But just so you know, it's well beyond the typical budget for someone of your background." He laughed softly, clearly trying to be charming, but the undertone of condescension was unmistakable. Maya felt a flash of anger rise in her chest, but she quickly tamped it down. She had spent too long in her life trying to please people who didn't matter, trying to shrink herself to fit into spaces that didn't welcome her. "Not today. Not anymore. I know what I want," she said firmly. "And I can afford it. Just show me the paperwork." The salesman's face froze for a moment, and the polite smile faded. He stared at her, disbelief flashing across his face. Then, as if realizing that his attitude could cost him a sale, he quickly composed himself. "Of course, ma'am. Let's get started then," he said, his voice now betraying a hint of caution. Maya stood tall, feeling a sense of pride swelling in her chest. She had just taken the first step toward her dreams, no matter what anyone else thought. As she sat down to begin the paperwork, Maya couldn't help but smile to herself. This was just the beginning. And she wasn't going to let anyone, especially a man who didn't believe in her, stand in the way of what she was about to achieve. She had come for a Rolls-Royce, but what she was about to find out was that the journey to owning one was going to be more transformative than she could have ever imagined. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maya sat back in the leather chair of the dealership's office, the smooth paper of the sales contract in front of her, and the weight of her decision pressing against her chest. She had just made an audacious request, asking for a Rolls-Royce Ghost. But what the salesman didn't know, what no one in this room could have possibly guessed, was that Maya had been dreaming of this moment for longer than they could imagine. The car wasn't just a symbol of luxury for her, it was a symbol of survival, of defying the odds, and above all, of proving her worth to the world. It hadn't always been this way for Maya. She hadn't grown up dreaming of the finer things in life, because, to be honest, she had never known them. Maya was raised in a small, modest home in the heart of a struggling neighborhood. The air was thick with the smell of fried food and gasoline, and the sounds of children playing outside were always accompanied by the distant hum of traffic. Life wasn't easy, but her mother, Evelyn, had always worked hard to make sure Maya never felt like they were lacking. Evelyn was the epitome of strength. A woman who had worked 2 jobs for as long as Maya could remember, just to make sure Maya had what she needed, even when it meant going without herself. Evelyn wasn't the kind of woman who accepted handouts, and she never let Maya believe that their circumstances defined their potential. Maya remembered the nights her mother would sit at the kitchen table, paying bills with a pencil and a small notepad, a furrow in her brow but determination in her eyes. Every time she would look up at Maya and say, "You are worth more than what you see around you. Don't let the world tell you otherwise." It wasn't easy, and sometimes it felt like Maya's mother was all she had. Her father, who had never really been around, had left when Maya was just a child. He never gave any reason, never explained himself, and it left a hole that Maya tried her best to ignore. But every so often, it hit her, the feeling of being abandoned. She didn't hold it against him, though. She'd come to terms with it. Life hadn't been kind to him, but that was no excuse to abandon his family. She'd made peace with his absence, but the void it left still echoed in her heart. Despite all that, Maya pushed forward, determined to make her mother proud and build a better future for herself. She didn't want to live in the shadows of her circumstances. Every book she read, every course she took, every hour she worked was another step toward her dream. Maya didn't just want to survive, she wanted to thrive. Her first job came when she was just 16, a part-time gig at a local diner. It was there that she learned the value of hard work, the power of a smile, and the way people could treat you depending on what you wore and how you carried yourself. She didn't mind the long hours or the low pay. What mattered was that she was doing something, she was making progress. And with every paycheck, she put a little away in savings. But Maya's journey wasn't all about scrubbing dishes and making tips. She was also a dreamer, someone who constantly looked beyond her circumstances and saw the potential for something greater. She was fascinated by the stories of people who overcame obstacles to achieve their dreams. One of the most inspiring was Oprah Winfrey. As a young girl, Maya would watch Oprah on TV, listening to her words of wisdom, and thinking, that could be me one day. Oprah's story, coming from a poor background and rising to fame, struck a chord deep inside Maya. It was the blueprint she followed, silently, in her own life. But beyond Oprah, there was something else that drove Maya. It was the constant reminder from her mother that they were more than their circumstances. Maya was determined to take that advice to heart and prove to the world, and to herself, that she could make something out of nothing. She wasn't the kind of person who waited for opportunities to come knocking. No, Maya created her own opportunities. Whether it was taking on extra shifts at the diner, finding freelance work online, or even starting a small tutoring business for high school students, she hustled. She worked her way up, inch by inch, from the bottom to something that felt just a little bit closer to the life she dreamed of. As Maya grew older, she realized that her drive wasn't just about money, it was about freedom. Freedom to live the life she wanted. Freedom to walk into a place like this dealership and make a statement without anyone questioning whether she belonged there. The Rolls-Royce wasn't just a car. It was a badge of her hard work, her determination, and her belief that she deserved more. But there was something else. Something Maya hadn't told anyone, not even her mother. Maya had always felt an internal struggle, something that grew stronger with each step of her success. She had a secret fear, that no matter how far she climbed, she would always be seen as less than. That no matter how much money she made, how many degrees she earned, or how many deals she closed, people would always look at her as other. The world would always see her as the woman who didn't belong. As the black woman who dared to dream beyond her station. She had felt it on countless occasions, the way people in her building looked at her when she wore something too nice, the way people in her workplace would smile and nod, but their eyes would say something else. She had felt it just this morning when the salesman at the dealership had looked her up and down, sizing her up in a way that made her feel like an outsider. But this time, this moment, was different. This time, Maya wasn't going to back down. She wasn't going to let the opinions of others dictate her future. She was going to buy that car. And she was going to do it on her own terms. Are you sure this is what you want? Evelyn's voice echoed in Maya's mind, a familiar question that always came after Maya announced some ambitious new goal. Maya smiled, remembering her mother's concern. Evelyn had always been protective of her, always worried that the world would be too harsh. But Maya knew one thing for sure, if she could make it here, if she could prove to the world that she was worthy of success, there would be no stopping her. Maya reached across the desk, picking up the paperwork that the salesman had slid in front of her. This was more than just about a car. It was about showing everyone that she was capable of anything. She was ready. And no one, not the salesman, not society, and certainly not her own doubts, was going to stop her. Maya sat in the dealership's plush leather chair, staring at the paperwork in front of her. Her hand rested on the sleek pen that had been offered to her by the salesman, but she couldn't bring herself to sign just yet. The air felt heavy around her, each breath thick with the weight of the decision she was about to make. A Rolls-Royce. It felt like a dream, yet it was real. But the closer she got to sealing the deal, the more questions crept into her mind, and the self-doubt she had tried so hard to bury began to surface. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm getting ahead of myself? The salesman, still standing across from her with an air of forced patience, had been talking about the car's features, things like the handcrafted interior, the whisper-quiet engine, and the technology that came with a car of this caliber. But Maya barely heard him anymore. She was too caught up in her thoughts. "Ma'am, I just need your signature here to finalize everything," the salesman said, his voice pulling her out of her mental fog. His expression had shifted from skepticism to something closer to indifference, as if Maya was just another customer passing through. And for a moment, it felt like she was. Maya's fingers tightened around the pen. This was the moment. But in the pit of her stomach, a gnawing voice whispered, "Are you sure?" She thought back to her mother's words, the times Evelyn had warned her about jumping into things too quickly. Her mother had always been cautious, practical. She was the one who taught Maya the value of money, of saving for the future, of not overextending yourself. And here Maya was, about to sign a check for a car that cost more than the total of her life's savings. Was she being reckless? Was this an impulse she would regret later? The salesman leaned in slightly, breaking her train of thought. "Ma'am, you're getting a fantastic deal here. The car is going fast, this model is in high demand. I'd hate to see you miss out on this opportunity." His voice was smooth, almost convincing. But the words felt like pressure, not encouragement. Maya's eyes flickered to the contract, then back to the salesman. She could feel the tension in her shoulders, the pull between the excitement of finally achieving a dream and the fear of taking on too much too soon. Was it the right time? Or was she rushing, driven by something deep within her that didn't want to let go of the fantasy? Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out, a welcome distraction from the suffocating decision in front of her. The message was from her best friend, Tasha. "Girl, are you serious about this? You really thinking of buying that Rolls?" Maya's thumb hovered over the screen for a moment. Tasha, as always, had a knack for cutting through Maya's doubts and forcing her to confront the truth. They had been friends since high school, and Tasha knew her better than anyone. She was the one who had always pushed Maya to dream bigger, to break free from the chains of self-doubt. Maya replied quickly, her fingers moving over the keys without much thought. "Yes. I'm here. Signing the papers right now." A few seconds later, Tasha's reply pinged through. "You got this, girl. But don't let anyone rush you. Do what feels right for you." Maya let out a slow breath, leaning back in the chair. Tasha's words echoed in her mind, and the weight of the decision suddenly felt a little less overwhelming. She wasn't just buying a car, she was investing in herself. This was her moment to prove that she could do anything she set her mind to. But it also had to be the right decision, not one made out of impulse or the desire to show off to anyone. Her eyes fell back to the paperwork. She couldn't ignore the reality of it all. A car like this would require more than just the cost of the vehicle itself. There would be insurance, maintenance, and the kind of lifestyle change that came with owning a luxury car. She could afford it now, but could she maintain it long term? Could she handle the pressure? As much as she wanted to ignore the worries, they were real. And they weren't going anywhere. A voice in her head reminded her of something she had heard years ago: "Don't rush to achieve success, make sure you're ready for it when it comes." That voice, now mingling with the self-doubt she was feeling, was not her own. It was the voice of her mother, whose words had shaped Maya's life. Evelyn had taught her not to chase dreams blindly, but to make sure she was prepared to hold them. But Maya had been preparing for this moment for years. She had worked tirelessly, sacrificed time with friends and family, and made countless decisions that put her on this path. So why was she questioning herself now? "Ma'am." The salesman's voice again. Maya snapped out of her thoughts, her gaze focusing back on him. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice clear but soft. I need a moment to think. He nodded, a slight irritation flickering in his eyes. Of course, take your time. But just so you know, this deal won't last long. Maya gave him a tight smile, not bothered by his subtle impatience. It was a tactic, she had read about it before. Salespeople would often make a customer feel like the opportunity was slipping away just to create urgency. But Maya wasn't about to be rushed. She stood up, the chair creaking beneath her, and walked toward the showroom floor. The Rolls-Royce Ghost sat there, bathed in sunlight, almost glowing against the dim interior of the dealership. She took a deep breath, the air filling her lungs, and looked at the car as if for the first time. Not as a dream, not as a symbol of success, but as something real, something tangible. It wasn't just about the car. It was about what the car represented. This moment, these doubts, all of it was part of her journey. Maya wasn't just about chasing the dream anymore, she was learning how to own it. She had been preparing for this for a long time, but now, she had to decide if she was truly ready. I'll take it, she whispered to herself, finding the courage to make the decision. But as she turned to go back to the desk, a voice stopped her, this time, not the salesman's. You sure about that, Maya? It was Tasha's voice, suddenly appearing beside her, as if she had known exactly when Maya would need her the most. Maya froze, surprised to see her best friend standing there, arms folded, with a playful smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Tasha's presence didn't ease her mind, it made her more aware of the weight of her choice. Maya had wanted to make this decision alone, but now that Tasha was here, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to. I don't know, Tasha, Maya said, a sigh escaping her lips. I want to, but it feels like too much. Am I ready for this? Tasha studied her for a moment before stepping closer, her voice soft. Only you can answer that, but don't let anyone tell you that you're not worthy of this. You've earned every single step. Just make sure this is the one you want. Maya looked at her best friend, feeling the doubt begin to lift, if only a little. It was strange how sometimes, the simplest of questions could make all the difference. Tasha didn't give her an answer, she just gave her space to think. And that was all Maya needed. Maya stood there in the showroom, the weight of Tasha's presence grounding her as she grappled with the gravity of her decision. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but filled with an unspoken understanding. Tasha hadn't asked why Maya was hesitating, she knew her friend well enough to know that this wasn't just about the car. This was a defining moment, a crossroad that would shape Maya's future, for better or worse. Maya's eyes drifted back to the Rolls-Royce Ghost. Its deep, glossy black paint shimmered under the fluorescent lights, its lines sleek and elegant, a stark contrast to the usual vehicles that filled the streets of her neighborhood. There was no denying its power, its allure. But was it the right symbol of success for her? Or was it just another way to prove to the world that she had made it? Tasha's voice broke the silence. What's holding you back, Maya? Maya shook her head, a soft chuckle escaping her lips. I don't know. It's just. I've been working toward this moment for so long, but now that it's here, it feels like, too much. Like I'm about to make a decision that could change everything. Tasha nodded, her expression thoughtful. Maya, you've been preparing for this moment for years. You've earned every single bit of success. But it's not just about the car. It's about the journey you've taken to get here. So, ask yourself, what does this car mean to you? Is it just a prize for all your hard work, or is it something that represents something deeper? Something you need to prove to yourself? Maya let the question hang in the air. What did the car represent? In the beginning, she had wanted it as a symbol of success, something tangible to show the world that she had made it. But now, standing here with Tasha by her side, Maya realized that the car was more than that. It was a testament to how far she had come, how much she had fought to reach this point. It wasn't just about the Rolls-Royce, it was about everything that led her to this moment. I think. Maya began, her voice quieter now. I think it's about proving to myself that I can handle this. That I can take this step and not feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Tasha smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. Maya, you've always been more than your circumstances. You've never let anyone tell you what you can or can't do. And this car, this is a reflection of that. Not just of what you've achieved, but who you've become. Maya felt a wave of warmth wash over her at Tasha's words. For the first time in a while, she felt a little less like an imposter, a little more like the woman she had worked so hard to become. I'm ready, Maya said, her voice more certain now, the hesitation starting to melt away. She knew that the car, while a luxury, wasn't going to define her. It was a part of her journey, not the end of it. Tasha grinned. You better be. Let's do this. Maya walked back to the desk, her steps feeling more confident, her mind clearer. She wasn't just signing a contract for a car, she was signing a new chapter of her life. A chapter where she could finally let go of the doubts and fears that had held her back for so long. The salesman, who had been patiently waiting, stood up straight as Maya approached. Ready, ma'am? He asked, his tone professional but lacking the warmth he'd shown earlier. He was eager to close the deal, Maya could tell, but something about his attitude rubbed her the wrong way. Yes, Maya said firmly, her hand extending toward the contract once more. She took the pen from the salesman's hand, and with a deep breath, she signed her name. The ink on the paper felt like the final nail in the coffin of all her doubts. There was no turning back now, and for the first time, Maya was okay with that. Excellent choice, ma'am, the salesman said, a forced smile on his face as he gathered the paperwork. The car will be ready for you tomorrow. You can pick it up at your convenience. Maya smiled, but it wasn't a smile for the salesman. It was a smile for herself. She had made it. She had walked into that dealership with a goal in mind, and now she was leaving with more than just a new car. She was leaving with a deeper understanding of herself, her worth, and her ability to trust her instincts. Tasha, who had been standing off to the side, clapped her hands together. I knew you could do it, she exclaimed, her voice full of pride. Maya laughed, the sound bubbling up from her chest. I'm still not sure about the car, but I know I've made the right choice for me. They both walked out of the dealership, the afternoon sun shining down on them, the weight of the decision finally starting to feel like something lighter. As Maya stepped into the parking lot, she couldn't help but glance at the car again. She had bought it, yes. But the question now was how to use it as a tool for something greater, something beyond the material. The car was hers, but it wasn't the prize. The prize was the courage it took to stand up to her own doubts, to move past the voice inside her head that told her she wasn't good enough or didn't deserve it. She looked at Tasha, who was practically bouncing with excitement. Let's go celebrate. I feel like we've just crossed a huge milestone. Tasha laughed. Girl, you've crossed more than that. This is the start of something big. I can feel it. Maya smiled, the thought of what lay ahead filling her with anticipation. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was eager to find out. Whatever the road ahead looked like, she was ready for it. As the two women drove off into the sunset, Maya couldn't help but think about all the moments that had led her here. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't the luxury. It was everything, the struggle, the sacrifice, the self-doubt, that had made this moment possible. The road ahead was uncertain, yes. But Maya knew one thing for sure, she was no longer afraid to drive down it. Maya hadn't fully realized the weight of her decision until she was sitting behind the wheel of the Rolls-Royce. The car was everything she'd dreamed of, sleek, powerful, and intoxicating in its quiet luxury. The leather seats embraced her like a second skin, the smooth wood trim gleamed under the soft lighting of the interior, and the dashboard was a masterpiece of technology. As her fingers brushed the wheel, a sense of power washed over her, and for a moment, she felt invincible. But as she pulled out of the dealership and onto the streets of the city, she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. People looked at her as she drove past, some with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few with judgment. The eyes of the world seemed to be on her, and it made her self-conscious. The city, her city, felt like a stage, and she was the star of the show, except she wasn't sure she was ready for the spotlight. The hum of the engine was like a lullaby, smooth and effortless, but her thoughts were anything but. Her nerves started to settle, but in their place, a new wave of doubt emerged. Was she really ready for this lifestyle? Was she the kind of person who could pull this off, or was this just a fleeting moment of triumph before everything came crashing down? She pulled into a small cafe near her apartment, parking the car carefully in a space at the far end of the lot. The car was so out of place here, amongst the modest sedans and pickup trucks. It felt like it didn't belong, like she didn't belong. Maya sat in the car for a moment, letting the silence of the luxury envelop her. She had worked hard for this, hadn't she? This was what she'd always wanted. But the reality of it felt different than the fantasy she'd imagined. She wasn't sure if she was feeling the weight of her success or the pressure that came with it. After a deep breath, she stepped out of the car and locked it. As she walked toward the cafe, her heels clicking on the pavement, she noticed a few heads turning. The car, the Rolls-Royce, was impossible to ignore, and neither was she. People were whispering, glancing at her, some with envy, others with curiosity. She couldn't help but feel their eyes on her, sizing her up, trying to figure out what she was doing here, in a place so far removed from the life she was now living. Inside the cafe, Maya ordered a coffee and sat by the window, her gaze drifting back to the car every few seconds. Her phone buzzed, and she looked down to see a text from Tasha. "You good? I saw your post. The car looks incredible." Maya smiled at the text but hesitated before replying. She wasn't sure what she was feeling, if she should be excited or if she was just trying to convince herself that she had made the right choice. Tasha's excitement made her question her own. "Maya?" The next message pinged through. "Talk to me. What's going on?" Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How could she explain the unease she was feeling? She had wanted this. She had worked so hard for it. But now that she had it, it felt like, a lot. Maybe more than she had bargained for. The weight of the car, the attention, the expectation, was she ready for all of it? "Maya?" Tasha's text made her laugh softly, but the truth was, she wasn't sure how to answer. She typed quickly, trying to make sense of her emotions. "I'm not sure what I was expecting. The car is amazing. But it feels different. People are looking at me, like they're wondering why I'm here. And I guess I'm wondering that, too." A moment later, Tasha replied, "Girl, this is what you've earned. People are gonna look. And some will judge. But that's on them, not you. You're allowed to shine, okay?" Maya read the message twice, then put her phone down. She knew Tasha was right. She had worked hard to get here. It wasn't like she had suddenly changed who she was. She was still Maya, the woman who grew up in a small apartment, the woman who hustled her way through college, the woman who never gave up. The car didn't define her. It wasn't a sign of who she was, but of who she had become. The real question was whether she could learn to embrace the life that came with it without letting it overwhelm her. She picked up her coffee, the rich aroma filling her senses, and sipped slowly. The warmth spread through her chest, calming her nerves. Maya didn't need to hide behind the car or pretend she was someone else. The success she had achieved was a result of years of hard work, sacrifices, and the strength to keep going, even when it seemed like the odds were against her. But now, she needed to figure out how to move forward with it, how to handle the attention, the expectations, and the pressure without letting it change who she was at her core. As she finished her coffee, a thought crossed her mind: maybe this isn't about handling the car. Maybe this is about handling the life I've worked so hard to create. She stood up, paying for her drink, and walked back outside to the Rolls-Royce. This time, she didn't hesitate as she slid behind the wheel. The car was still a symbol of success, but it was more than that. It was a reminder of how far she had come, and how much further she could go. As she started the engine, the familiar hum of power vibrated through her, filling her with a sense of possibility. The world was still watching, but now, it was her time to define what that meant. With a deep breath, Maya pulled away from the cafe and into the street, the city unfolding in front of her. It wasn't just the car that had changed, it was her. And now, she was ready to show the world just what that meant. Maya's confidence grew as the weeks passed, but so did the pressure. The car had become more than just a vehicle, it was a symbol of her success, and with that success came expectations. It was as if everyone, from her family to her co-workers, were watching her more closely than ever. Her social media was flooded with comments and likes, people congratulated her, but there were whispers too. Some were genuine, but others felt more like they were sizing her up, judging whether she deserved to be driving such an extravagant car. And it didn't help that people in her neighborhood, who once knew her as the girl from down the street, seemed to look at her differently now. The tension simmered below the surface, especially as she arrived at work one morning. Maya's colleagues had started treating her with a new level of respect, and while that was flattering, it also made her feel isolated. They admired her success, but there was an undertone of something else, something that made her feel like an outsider in her own workplace. As she walked into the building, she caught the eye of her boss, Mr. Lawson. He was standing at the entrance of the office, greeting employees as they came in. His gaze lingered a bit longer on her than usual. There was something almost predatory about it, and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that he was sizing her up, looking for something. "Morning, Maya," he said, his tone overly friendly, a hint of something she couldn't quite place. "Morning, Mr. Lawson," she replied, offering a polite smile, but his gaze made her feel uncomfortable. "You're looking, well," he said, his eyes flicking toward her car parked in the lot outside. "The new car looks good on you." She didn't know whether to take it as a compliment or a veiled critique. "Thanks," she said, keeping her response short as she moved past him. She wasn't in the mood for small talk today. As Maya settled into her office, she tried to focus on her work, but the tension in the air was palpable. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mom, and Maya couldn't help but feel a tightness in her chest as she read it. "I saw the car, baby girl. It's beautiful, but, do you really need something like that?" Her mother's words hit her like a ton of bricks. She had always told Maya to be humble, to keep her feet on the ground, and now, with the car, she was feeling a deep sense of guilt. Was she showing off? Had she let success go to her head? It was like a voice in the back of her mind was telling her she didn't deserve the luxury she now had. Maya quickly typed a response, trying to balance the gratitude she felt for her success with the guilt that was creeping up on her. "Mom, I've worked so hard for this. I'm not trying to show off. I'm trying to enjoy the fruits of my labor." The reply came through a few minutes later, a simple "I understand," but Maya could feel the unspoken judgment between the lines. Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was Tasha. "Hey girl, you okay? I can tell something's off." Maya smiled at her best friend's concern but hesitated before replying. She didn't want to burden Tasha with her insecurities, but at the same time, she needed to talk to someone who would understand. "I don't know, Tasha. I feel like I'm being judged by everyone. My mom thinks I'm showing off, my coworkers are acting like I'm some kind of superstar, and I don't know, it just feels like too much." The response came quickly, as expected. "Listen, Maya. You've worked hard for everything you have. You earned that car. And if people are looking at you differently, that's on them, not you. You can't let their judgments dictate how you live your life. You've gotta own it, girl. Be proud of what you've accomplished." Maya took a deep breath as she read the message. It was exactly what she needed to hear, but it didn't erase the pressure. The pressure to live up to everyone's expectations, her family's, her co-workers, and even her own. Was she supposed to keep proving herself, even though she had already made it? Later that afternoon, Maya was called into Mr. Lawson's office. Her stomach tightened as she walked down the hallway, the click of her heels echoing off the walls. She knocked and entered, finding him sitting behind his large desk, his fingers steepled together in front of him. "Ah, Maya. Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His demeanor was cordial, but there was something in his eyes that unsettled her. "Thank you," Maya said, sitting down. She tried to remain calm, but her heart was racing. She had no idea what this meeting was about. "I wanted to talk to you about your recent performance," Mr. Lawson began, leaning forward slightly. "You've been doing exceptional work, Maya. Your results have been impressive, as always." She smiled, grateful for the compliment, but the tension in his voice made her uneasy. "That said," he continued, "I've been hearing some things from the higher-ups. Some concerns about your focus. You've been distracted lately, and I'm just wondering if everything's okay." Maya's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I've been working hard." "I'm not questioning your work ethic, Maya," he said, his tone softening. "But you're a key player in the company now, and with that comes a certain level of responsibility. People look up to you. Your new car, the social media posts, it's all, well, it's drawing attention." Maya bit her lip, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I don't see how that's a problem. I'm still doing my job." Mr. Lawson leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the desk. "I understand. But you have to remember, Maya, success can be a double-edged sword. It can bring you the recognition you deserve, but it can also create a lot of pressure. You need to be careful how you navigate this. Not everyone will be as supportive as you think." Maya felt the weight of his words. He wasn't telling her to stop, but he was warning her. It was as if the success she had worked so hard for was now under a microscope, and one wrong move could bring it all crashing down. When the meeting ended, Maya walked out of Mr. Lawson's office with a knot in her stomach. She wasn't sure if she was just overthinking things or if there was a real issue with her newfound success. Either way, it felt like she was walking a tightrope, and every step she took seemed to be scrutinized by everyone around her. As the day wore on, Maya found herself thinking about everything that had led her to this point, the sacrifices, the late nights, the obstacles she had overcome. And now that she had everything she'd worked for, was it really worth it if it came with so much pressure? As she left the office that evening, she sat in the car for a moment before starting the engine. The Rolls-Royce was still a symbol of achievement, but now it also felt like a weight she wasn't sure she could carry alone. Tasha's words echoed in her mind, "You've gotta own it." Maya looked at the car, then at her reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time, she wasn't just staring at the woman she'd become. She was wondering if she was ready for all that came with it. The days after the conversation with Mr. Lawson hung over Maya like a cloud she couldn't shake. His words kept replaying in her mind, "You need to be careful how you navigate this." Was her success really something she needed to tread lightly around? Was it becoming too much of a spectacle? She had always believed that hard work and persistence would be the key to her rise, but now she was beginning to feel the repercussions of standing out. As she entered her apartment later that evening, the weight of the day seemed to seep into her bones. The luxury of the Rolls-Royce seemed a distant memory compared to the heaviness that now clung to her. She dropped her bag onto the couch, feeling the exhaustion that had built up over the week. The once thrilling thought of driving the car had started to feel like a burden. Maya collapsed onto the couch, her thoughts scattered. She grabbed her phone, looking for any distraction. Her mom had called again, and her heart sank as she saw the missed calls. She hadn't responded to her earlier text. She had to figure out how to respond, but each time she thought about it, the guilt in her chest tightened. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Tasha. "Hey, how are you holding up? I can tell you're stressed." Maya stared at the screen for a moment, unsure what to say. She wanted to tell Tasha how overwhelming everything felt but didn't want to burden her more than she already had. They'd been friends for years, and Tasha had always been there for her, but lately, Maya was starting to feel like the gap between her life and her best friends was growing wider. "Maya?" The second text came through, more pressing. "Girl, you have to talk to me. What's going on?" Maya sighed and finally typed a response. "I don't know, Tasha. I feel like everyone's looking at me differently. It's like I'm the girl who has everything, and it's weird. I don't know if I'm handling it the right way, you know." Seconds later, Tasha responded, "Girl, you worked for that car. You're doing fine. But it sounds like you need to take a breath and put things into perspective. If you let everyone's opinions get to you, you're gonna drown in them. You're still Maya. Don't forget that." Maya smiled at Tasha's words, even though the doubt inside her hadn't disappeared. Maybe Tasha was right. She had worked hard for everything she had, and maybe, just maybe, she had to stop letting other people's opinions dictate how she felt about her success. As the night wore on, Maya tried to distract herself. She cleaned her apartment, cooked a simple dinner, and scrolled mindlessly through her social media accounts, but nothing seemed to calm her. The weight in her chest only grew heavier as she thought about what Mr. Lawson had said. How could she keep balancing everything? She wanted to stay grounded, but it was starting to feel like the world was forcing her to rise to a level she wasn't sure she was prepared for. The next day at work was no better. Maya entered the office early, hoping to get a jump on her tasks and avoid any awkward interactions. But as soon as she stepped inside, she could feel the eyes on her. It wasn't just Mr. Lawson anymore. Her colleagues seemed to be treating her with a new kind of distance, almost as if they were afraid to get too close. A couple of hours into the day, Maya's phone buzzed with an email. It was from the HR department, subject, "Feedback on your performance." Maya's stomach dropped. Was this it? Was this the moment when everything came crashing down? She opened the email, her fingers trembling slightly. The message wasn't as bad as she'd feared. It was more of a general check-in, asking how she was adjusting to the increased visibility and responsibility. But there was a sentence that caught her eye. "We want to ensure that your success doesn't compromise your ability to collaborate with your team. Please let us know if you need any additional resources or support in this regard." Maya stared at the message for a long time. The insinuation was clear, her success was causing some friction within the office. But was she supposed to just shrink back? Was she expected to hide her accomplishments to make others feel more comfortable? Maya closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing: she couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. She needed to talk to someone who would understand, someone who would be able to help her see things from a different perspective. There was only one person she trusted with everything: her brother, Jamal. Maya called him that afternoon, and within minutes, he picked up. "Yo, sis, what's up?" "Hey, Jamal," Maya said, trying to keep her voice light. "Got a minute?" "Always for you. What's going on?" Maya hesitated, her fingers tapping on her desk as she thought about how to explain everything that had been building up. "I don't know, Jamal. I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this. The car, the job, the attention. It's like I can't breathe anymore. I don't know how to keep it all together." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Jamal spoke again, his voice was calm but firm. "Maya, you know I've always had your back. But you gotta understand something. You're not just some girl driving a nice car. You've worked your ass off to get to this point. People are gonna talk. They're gonna judge you. But that's on them, not you. You've got a lot to offer, and that car. It's just a reminder of that. Don't let anyone or anything make you feel less than who you are. Maya's heart swelled with emotion as she listened to her brother's words. Jamal had always been her rock, and hearing him speak with such conviction made her feel a little lighter. "Thanks, Jamal," she whispered. "I needed to hear that." "Anytime, sis. Just don't forget who you are. You've got this." As she hung up the phone, Maya felt a sense of clarity wash over her. Jamal was right. She wasn't just her car, or her job, or the opinions of others. She was Maya, strong, determined, and unapologetically herself. It was time to stop letting the weight of other people's judgments affect her. She had worked hard for everything she had, and she deserved to enjoy the fruits of her labor without guilt. That evening, she sat at her desk and made a decision. The next morning, she was going to have a conversation with Mr. Lawson, not just about her performance, but about what it meant to succeed and how she was navigating this new phase of her life. It was time to stop letting fear control her decisions. She wasn't going to shrink back. She was going to stand tall. The following morning, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her blazer and fixing her hair with meticulous care. She had already rehearsed what she was going to say to Mr. Lawson a dozen times in her head. But no matter how many times she went over it, her heart still pounded as if it had a mind of its own. Today, she wasn't just going to be another employee seeking approval, she was going to stand her ground. The drive to work was quiet. The city felt calm, almost too calm, as if everything was holding its breath. The Rolls-Royce gleamed in the morning sun, a symbol of her hard work, but today, it felt different. The car no longer felt like a prize, but rather a challenge. A reminder that success, as glorious as it may seem, came with its own set of burdens. When she parked the car in her usual spot, Maya took a moment to look at her reflection in the rearview mirror. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, just before she stepped out of the car and walked into the office. She arrived early, as usual, hoping to get some work done before anyone else arrived. But as she walked through the glass doors and into the lobby, she could already feel the tension. The receptionist greeted her with a stiff smile, and she noticed a few other employees exchanging glances as she passed by. It was subtle, but the shift in their attitudes was undeniable. Maya could sense the whispers before they even started. When she reached her desk, she took a deep breath and opened her laptop. She'd just started checking her emails when a knock at the door interrupted her. It was Mr. Lawson. "Maya," he said, his usual charm replaced by a more somber tone. "Can I have a word?" Maya stood up, her nerves tingling with anticipation. "Of course, Mr. Lawson." He didn't wait for her to follow him, instead, he gestured toward his office. "Let's talk privately." As they walked down the hallway, Maya's mind raced. Was this going to be a confrontation? Had her concerns about being judged finally caught up with her? She couldn't help but wonder if her decision to drive the Rolls-Royce had really been a mistake. Maybe she should have kept things more modest, like her mom had suggested. But it was too late for that now. She was about to face the consequences of everything she had worked for. When they entered his office, Mr. Lawson closed the door behind them and gestured for her to sit down. Maya took a deep breath and sat across from him, trying to keep her posture straight and her nerves under control. "Maya," Mr. Lawson began, his tone more serious than it had ever been. "I wanted to talk to you about your recent behavior. Specifically, your interactions with your colleagues and the way you've been presenting yourself." Maya's heart sank, but she remained calm. This was the moment. She had prepared herself for it. "Look, I know things have been a little different lately," she began. "But I want to make one thing clear, I'm not trying to rub my success in anyone's face. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I'm proud of that. But I also understand that my success has created some tension, and that's not my intention." Mr. Lawson raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "I understand that. But we need to talk about how your presence is affecting the team." You've been a valuable asset to this company, but when people start feeling uncomfortable around you, when they start questioning your motives, it can become a problem. You need to understand that the way you're carrying yourself might be giving off the wrong impression. Maya felt a lump form in her throat, but she refused to let it show. This wasn't just about her. It was about owning her journey, her success, and making it clear that she wasn't going to hide who she was or what she had accomplished. "I get it," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "But I'm not going to apologize for achieving my goals. I've worked hard for this company and for my career. I'm not going to shrink myself to make others feel comfortable. That's not who I am." There was a long silence between them, and for a moment, Maya wondered if she had said too much. But then, to her surprise, Mr. Lawson sat back in his chair inside. "You're right," he said, his voice softer now. "I should have been more clear about my concerns. The truth is, Maya, it's not just about your car or your success. It's about how others perceive you in a corporate environment. People are always watching, and some are uncomfortable with the idea of someone moving up so quickly, especially when they feel left behind. But that's their issue, not yours." Maya's eyes widened. This wasn't the response she had been expecting. It was as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Mr. Lawson wasn't just criticizing her, he was acknowledging the complex nature of success in the workplace. "So, what do you suggest?" Maya asked, her voice steady but full of curiosity. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "You have to walk a fine line, Maya. Keep excelling, but be mindful of how you interact with your peers. Don't make them feel like they have to catch up to you. It's a balancing act." Maya nodded slowly, her thoughts racing. She understood what he meant. The world she had entered wasn't just about her accomplishments, it was also about how she navigated relationships and perceptions. But she wasn't going to let that change who she was. She had worked too hard to get here to suddenly hide in the shadows. "I'll keep that in mind," she said, feeling a newfound sense of clarity. "But I'm not going to apologize for being successful. I've earned it." Mr. Lawson gave a nod of approval, his expression softening slightly. "I can respect that. Just remember, success is a journey, not a destination. And you're on the right path. Just keep your head up, Maya." After the conversation ended, Maya walked back to her desk with a renewed sense of determination. She wasn't going to let anyone tell her how to navigate her success. She was ready to own every step of her journey, no matter what others thought. As the day went on, Maya felt a shift in the air. The tension that had been hanging over her seemed to ease. Her colleagues no longer looked at her with the same distance. Instead, there was a sense of mutual understanding. It wasn't that they fully accepted her success, they weren't all there yet. But for the first time in weeks, Maya felt like she could breathe again. Later that afternoon, she walked past Mr. Lawson's office again. He looked up from his desk and gave her a nod, a small but genuine acknowledgement. It was subtle, but it was enough. For the first time, Maya felt like she had found her place, not just at work, but in the world she had created for herself. She was on the path to something bigger, and now, no one was going to make her feel small. Maya had always prided herself on her ability to handle pressure. But as the weeks passed after her conversation with Mr. Lawson, she began to feel like the weight of the world was pressing down on her. It wasn't just the challenges at work, though they were significant, it was everything else, the relentless opinions of others, the constant battle to stay grounded in a world that demanded her to rise higher and higher. The more she tried to keep everything together, the more it seemed to unravel. At first, the shift in her office environment had seemed subtle. Colleagues who once greeted her with enthusiasm now offered polite nods or avoided eye contact altogether. They were treating her like a stranger. And no matter how many times she tried to brush it off, the isolation gnawed at her. She wasn't just a colleague anymore, she was a symbol, an image of success that others could never fully embrace. Maya couldn't help but wonder if they saw her as a threat, or worse, if they felt like she didn't belong. It wasn't just work either. Her family, too, seemed to be reacting differently to her success. Her mom had called less frequently, and when she did, there was an undertone of worry in her voice. "Are you sure you're okay, Maya?" she'd asked last week. "You don't sound like yourself. You're not forgetting where you come from, right?" Maya had brushed it off at the time, but now those words haunted her. What did her mom mean by that? Was she implying that success had changed her? Maya didn't want to be the kind of person who let power or wealth distort her, but she also didn't want to deny the hard work that had gotten her to this point. The tension reached its peak one Friday afternoon, as the office prepared for an end-of-week meeting. Maya had been working non-stop, her inbox filled with last-minute requests, and the pressure of an important project deadline looming over her. As she walked into the conference room, she was met with the same stares, some curious, some judgmental, others veiled with envy. She felt it like a physical weight as she took her seat at the long table. The meeting began, but Maya barely registered the details. She nodded along, her thoughts drifting, replaying her interactions with everyone in the office. Despite Mr. Lawson's reassurance, despite her own inner strength, she felt like an outsider. And then, without warning, it happened. "Maya, could you explain your thought process on the proposal?" Mr. Lawson asked, his voice cutting through her haze. The room fell silent, all eyes shifting to her. Maya froze, her throat tightening. She had been so absorbed in her thoughts that she hadn't fully prepared for this moment. The words didn't come to her easily. She had always been able to articulate her ideas with clarity and confidence, but now, it felt like her mind had gone completely blank. She cleared her throat and pushed herself to speak, but her voice sounded small, almost unrecognizable. I think the proposal needs more adjustments. We need to revisit the budget estimates and rework the strategy." Her words trailed off, and the silence in the room grew heavier. She could feel the judgment, the disapproval. The unease in her gut bubbled to the surface. Mr. Lawson didn't say anything right away. The tension stretched on for what felt like an eternity, and when he finally spoke, his tone was colder than usual. "We'll talk about this later," he said, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at her. The words were final. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she sat back in her chair, barely able to focus on anything around her. She could feel her colleagues' eyes on her, some of them filled with pity, others with something darker, disappointment, maybe. She didn't know for sure, but it didn't matter. She had failed. The rest of the meeting went by in a blur. Maya could barely keep her focus on the discussion. Her mind was spinning, the anxiety creeping up with every passing second. When the meeting ended, she was the first one to leave, practically fleeing the conference room. Maya had no idea where she was going, but her feet carried her out of the building, through the parking lot, and into the quiet of her car. She sat there, staring at the steering wheel, unable to move. Her breathing was shallow, and her thoughts were chaotic. The pressure was suffocating. She had worked so hard to get to this point, but now, it felt like she was losing everything. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her spiral. It was a text from Tasha. "You good?" Maya stared at the message for a moment before typing a response. "No, I'm not. Everything's falling apart. I can't do this anymore, Tasha. I feel like I'm losing myself." Tasha replied almost immediately. "Hey, take a breath. You're not losing anything. You're just adjusting. You've got a lot on your plate. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. But don't let it break you." Maya read Tasha's words over and over again, but they did little to ease the storm inside her. The weight of her success, the expectations, the judgments, it was all too much. She had thought she was strong enough to handle it, but now she wasn't so sure. She started the car, the engine humming to life as she pulled out of the parking lot. She wasn't sure where she was going, but she knew she needed space, space to think, to breathe, to escape for just a moment. As she drove through the city, Maya's mind raced. She needed answers. She needed to know if all of this, the car, the job, the pressure, was worth it. Was this the life she had been working toward? Was this the life she really wanted? The car seemed to drive itself, taking her further and further from the office and into unfamiliar parts of town. After what felt like hours, she found herself parked outside a small park, the sun dipping below the horizon. She hadn't planned to stop, but now that she was here, she felt a strange sense of peace. Maya got out of the car and walked toward the swings, her mind still a whirlwind of thoughts. She sat down on the swing, pushing herself gently back and forth as the world around her slowly quieted. Maybe she wasn't supposed to have all the answers right now. Maybe the journey wasn't meant to be easy. But at that moment, Maya realized something important. She didn't have to have everything figured out to keep moving forward. She just needed to remember who she was beneath all the labels, beneath the car and the job and the expectations. She was Maya. She had worked hard for everything she had, and she had earned her place at the table. The pressure, the judgment, it was all part of the journey. But she wasn't going to let it break her. She was going to keep fighting, keep growing, and keep pushing forward. No matter what. Maya sat on the swing, the rhythmic motion helping her calm her breathing. The cool evening breeze brushed against her skin, and the quiet of the park wrapped around her like a blanket. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to melt away, if only for a moment. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to simply be. She closed her eyes, taking in the silence. In the midst of everything, the office politics, the unspoken tension between her colleagues, the pressure she put on herself to succeed, she had forgotten what it felt like to just breathe. Her phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. It was Tasha, once more checking in. "You still there?" Maya stared at the message for a long moment before typing a response. "Yeah. I'm here. Just needed some air. I don't know what's going on with me, Tasha. Everything's slipping through my fingers. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending like I have it all together." It didn't take long for Tasha to respond. "Maya, stop. You don't need to have it all together. It's okay to not have all the answers right now. You're still figuring it out. And that's all right. We all are." Maya let out a long, shaky breath. Tasha's words felt like a lifeline, but they also made her realize something important. Maybe she didn't have to pretend. Maybe it was okay to acknowledge that everything wasn't perfect. It wasn't about having it all figured out, it was about how she faced the uncertainty. The park had grown darker, and the streetlights flickered on one by one. Maya stood up from the swing and walked toward the park's small pond, her thoughts clearer now than they had been all day. She had been so focused on being successful, on proving herself, that she had forgotten the most crucial thing of all: who was she, really? What did she want? She paused by the edge of the water and looked down at her reflection. The woman she saw staring back at her was familiar, yet different, more mature, more confident. But there was still something raw, something unrefined about her that felt distant from the polished version she had been presenting to the world. It was like she had been so busy chasing success that she had forgotten to check in with herself. Maya's thoughts drifted back to her conversation with Mr. Lawson. He had told her to walk a fine line, to balance her success with how she interacted with others. But what if that balance wasn't the only thing she needed to focus on? What if the real challenge was learning how to define her success on her terms, without letting anyone else's judgment shape it? A quiet realization swept over her: she didn't need permission from anyone to be herself. She didn't have to apologize for her achievements, but she also didn't have to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations. She had the power to define her own path. The sound of footsteps approaching snapped Maya out of her reverie. She turned around to see a familiar figure walking toward her. It was Tasha. What are you doing here? Maya asked, her voice filled with surprise but relief at the sight of her best friend. Tasha shrugged, a mischievous grin on her face. I figured you could use some company. You've been gone for a while. And honestly, I'm getting worried about you. Maya smiled faintly, her heart warming at the gesture. I just needed some time to think. Everything feels so chaotic, Tasha. I don't know how to balance all of it anymore. Tasha leaned against the railing, looking out over the water. I get it. You're juggling a lot. But you don't have to do it all alone. And you don't have to pretend that everything's fine when it's not. Maya exhaled slowly, her gaze fixed on the water. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Sometimes, it feels like I'm losing myself. You're not losing yourself, Maya. You're just rediscovering who you really are. It's okay to change. It's okay to evolve. You're allowed to be messy sometimes, and that doesn't make you any less strong. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. Tasha always knew how to say the right thing. She wasn't giving her answers, but she was giving her space to find them on her own. I don't know if I can go back to the office tomorrow, Maya admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Everything's so tense. I feel like everyone is watching me, judging me. I don't know how to fix it. Tasha reached out and squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to fix anything. You just need to show up as yourself. Let them see the real you, without worrying about how they'll respond. You've done enough. You've worked hard for everything you have. And no matter what happens, no one can take that away from you. Maya nodded, feeling the truth of her friend's words seep into her heart. The weight on her shoulders wasn't going to disappear overnight, but maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry it alone. As the two of them stood there by the water, talking about everything and nothing at all, Maya realized that the only thing she truly needed was to trust herself again. She didn't need to fit into anyone else's mold. She didn't need to conform to their expectations. The only person she had to answer to was herself. The following morning, Maya walked into the office with a newfound sense of purpose. She didn't have all the answers yet, and she still had a lot of work to do. But she was done trying to hide behind the walls she had built around herself. She was going to show up as she was, vulnerable, confident, strong, and imperfect. And if others couldn't handle that, well, that was on them. She wasn't going to shrink herself anymore. The first step was always the hardest, but Maya was ready to take it. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maya's first day back at work after her emotional night in the park was an experiment in balance. She was determined to face the challenges ahead, but this time, she would do it on her own terms. The moment she walked through the office doors, something felt different, lighter, almost as if the air itself had shifted. Maybe it was her perspective, or maybe it was the newfound sense of confidence she had gained from her conversation with Tasha. Either way, Maya knew this was a fresh start. She made her way to her desk, greeting her colleagues with a warm smile. As always, some nodded back, while others barely glanced in her direction. But Maya no longer felt the sting of rejection in those brief exchanges. She wasn't going to let their silence define her. She had been carrying around the belief that she needed their approval to validate her place in this world, but now, she knew better. Maya sat down and opened her laptop. Her inbox was filled with dozens of emails, some urgent, others simply routine. She quickly skimmed through them, prioritizing what needed her immediate attention. But there was something different in her approach this time. Instead of reacting impulsively, she took a deep breath and approached each task with a calm sense of control. She knew she couldn't solve everything in a day, and she didn't need to. Around midday, Maya found herself in the break room, grabbing a cup of coffee when Mr. Lawson walked in. He gave her a nod, a subtle acknowledgement, but this time, there was no tension between them. Maya could sense that the strained air had lifted. He seemed to understand that her confidence had returned, and that change, whether he fully acknowledged it or not, was already taking root. "Morning, Maya," Mr. Lawson said, his tone less formal than usual. "How's everything going? The project moving along?" Maya took a sip of her coffee before responding, her voice steady. "It's coming along. I've had a chance to review everything, and I've made some adjustments. We'll be ready for the next phase by the end of the week." "Good," he replied, a hint of approval in his voice. "Looking forward to it." For the first time, Maya didn't feel the need to over-explain herself. She wasn't seeking validation from Mr. Lawson, and that made all the difference. She simply stated the facts, confident that she was capable of delivering. She wasn't going to let anyone or anything make her second-guess her abilities. As the day progressed, Maya felt the changes within herself ripple outward. Her interactions with her colleagues were less about playing a part or living up to expectations and more about being present. Whether it was a quick chat about a work task or a more casual exchange, Maya found herself engaging with people from a place of authenticity. It felt liberating to no longer hide behind a mask. By the time the afternoon rolled around, Maya was deep into the project work, refining details and making decisions that had previously felt daunting. But now, she moved through the tasks with ease, like a dancer finding the rhythm of the music. Each decision felt grounded, rooted in her own clarity and not the pressure she used to feel. It was a good day. In fact, it was one of the best days she had had in weeks. Later that evening, as Maya sat in her apartment, reflecting on her day, her phone buzzed with a message from her mom. "Hey baby, how's everything going?" Maya smiled, reading her mom's message. It had been a while since they'd had a real conversation. As much as she loved her family, Maya often felt like they didn't fully understand the world she was now a part of. The hustle, the corporate grind, it was a different world than what they were familiar with. She quickly typed a response. "Things are going well, Mom. I'm finding a better balance, I think. I'm feeling a lot more confident." Her phone buzzed again, this time with a voice message. Maya pressed play, hearing her mom's warm voice come through the speaker. "That's good to hear, baby. Just remember to take care of yourself, alright? Don't let all the pressure get to you. You're enough, just as you are." Maya felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Her mom's words, simple but sincere, were exactly what she needed to hear. She had been so focused on proving herself, on meeting everyone else's expectations, that she had forgotten the most important truth of all: she was already enough. She didn't have to do anything extra to validate her worth. She had been worthy all along. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were different this time. They weren't tears of frustration or sadness, they were tears of relief. In that moment, Maya realized how much pressure she had placed on herself over the years, how much she had tried to force herself into roles that others expected her to play. But now, she was free. She was allowed to simply be. As the evening drew to a close, Maya felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for months. She wasn't fully where she wanted to be, but she was on the right path. And that was enough. The following morning, when Maya arrived at work, she was ready for whatever the day would bring. She had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but she felt prepared to face them head-on. She wasn't alone in her journey, and most importantly, she didn't have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had the support of her friends, her family, and, most importantly, herself. The day passed in a blur of productivity and calm, with Maya fully immersed in the work at hand. By the end of the day, when she checked her email one last time, there was a message from Mr. Lawson. "Great work today, Maya. I can see the progress. Keep it up." It was a simple message, but it meant the world to Maya. Not because she was looking for his approval, but because it was confirmation that her shift in mindset was working. She was doing the work, not for validation, but because it was her work. And that, in itself, was enough. That night, as Maya lay in bed, she couldn't help but smile. She had come so far. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited for what the future held. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be herself. And that was more than enough. Maya had always been someone who thrived under pressure, someone who prided herself on being able to juggle multiple tasks at once. But lately, as she settled into her new mindset of authenticity and self-assurance, she found herself tackling challenges with a sense of clarity that she hadn't experienced before. The days that used to be filled with stress and worry now felt like a chance to test her limits, not because she had something to prove, but because she was doing it for herself. It had been a week since that breakthrough day at work, and Maya was already noticing the subtle shifts in her interactions with her colleagues. She wasn't just doing the work, she was leading the work. The team was responding to her more positively, and even the once distant Mr. Lawson had begun to approach her with more respect. He had seen the change in her, and whether he admitted it or not, he was starting to appreciate it. Maya had just wrapped up a meeting when she received a call from Tasha. The familiar ringtone pulled her away from the mountain of emails she was trying to get through. She picked up immediately, not needing to see the caller ID to know it was her best friend. "Hey, you," Maya greeted with a smile in her voice. "Hey, girl. How's the new and improved Maya doing?" Tasha's playful tone was filled with excitement. Maya laughed softly. "Honestly, it feels pretty damn good. I'm learning to let go of the pressure, you know. Just focusing on doing my best, without constantly worrying about how others see me. That's what I'm talking about. You've come a long way, huh? I remember how stressed you used to get. It's so inspiring to watch you own this." Maya leaned back in her chair, glancing out the window at the city skyline. It was the same view she'd had every day, but today, it felt different. The world felt bigger, fuller, and full of possibilities. Yeah, it's crazy how much difference a change in perspective can make. I'm still learning a lot, but it feels like I'm finally finding my rhythm. Like, I'm moving in the right direction for once, instead of just spinning my wheels. I'm so proud of you, Maya. And you know what? This is just the beginning. Something big is coming your way, I can feel it. Maya felt a surge of gratitude for Tasha's words. Her best friend had been a constant source of support, always knowing the right thing to say to keep her grounded. But it was true, something was changing. And Maya couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that it was all leading up to something big, something that would push her to the next level in her career, and in her life. As the days passed, Maya continued to move forward with determination, but now she felt a sense of ease that had been absent before. Her colleagues were noticing the difference, too. She had gone from just another team member to a leader in her own right. She was organizing meetings with ease, offering valuable insights, and handling high-pressure situations without breaking a sweat. One afternoon, as Maya sat in her office working on a proposal, Mr. Lawson knocked gently on her door. She looked up to see him standing there, his usual stern expression replaced with something else, something she couldn't quite place. "Maya, can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. "Of course, Mr. Lawson," she replied, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't expected a visit from him, especially not in such a personal way. She gestured for him to sit down. He closed the door behind him, sitting across from her. "I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming pitch. You've been doing exceptional work, Maya. I've been watching you closely these last few weeks, and I've noticed a real shift. You're not just getting the job done, you're setting the pace. You've earned my respect." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had been working hard, but this kind of recognition felt different. It wasn't just praise for her skills, it was acknowledgement of her growth. Of her evolution. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. That means a lot to me," Maya said, her voice steady. "I've been pushing myself to grow, to not just do the work, but to really lead with intention. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of respect and something deeper. And that's why I want to offer you something. We've got an opening for a senior position on the team. I think you're the right person for the job. Maya's mind raced. Senior position. She had worked hard for this moment, but hearing it from Mr. Lawson made it feel real, tangible. I don't know what to say, she stammered, trying to wrap her head around what was happening. You don't need to say anything just yet, Mr. Lawson continued, his voice more measured now. Take some time. Think about it. But I want you to know that this is more than just a promotion. It's about the impact you've made, the way you've led this team even when things were difficult. You've shown a level of maturity and leadership that's hard to ignore. Maya's heart was pounding now. She had dreamed of this moment, but hearing it from Mr. Lawson was something else entirely. It wasn't just about getting the title, it was about proving to herself that she was capable, that she had the skills and the vision to lead. I'll think about it, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. But inside, she was already starting to picture herself in that role. It felt like the culmination of everything she had worked for, and yet, it also felt like the start of something entirely new. Mr. Lawson stood up, giving her a final look of encouragement. Take your time, Maya. This is your moment. I know you'll make the right choice. As he left the room, Maya sat back in her chair, the weight of the conversation sinking in. A senior position. A leadership role. She had always wanted to get ahead, but now, she was faced with the responsibility of that choice. It wasn't just about moving up, it was about showing up for herself, for her team, and for her future. But as she sat there, thinking about everything she had been through to get to this point, she realized something else. This wasn't just a job offer. It was the universe telling her that she was ready. Ready for what was next. Ready to continue her growth, to step into a role that would challenge her and push her limits. And she was ready for it. As she sat there, her heart filled with anticipation and excitement for the future. Maya knew that this was the moment she had been working toward all along. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something even bigger. Maya sat in her office, the letter Mr. Lawson had handed her still resting on her desk. The senior position offer stared back at her, its significance sinking in deeper with every passing second. For years, she had dreamed of a moment like this, an opportunity to prove herself, not just to others, but to herself as well. But now that it was in her grasp, it felt different. The weight of the decision before her was almost palpable. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Her mind was racing with 100 different thoughts. This was what she had worked for, wasn't it? The recognition, the career advancement, the acknowledgement of her hard work. But something inside her tugged at her, telling her that there was more to this decision than just the promotion itself. Maya had spent so much of her life pushing herself to meet the expectations of others, her parents, her colleagues, society as a whole. But now, she had learned to define success on her own terms. She had taken the time to understand what she truly wanted and needed. The idea of climbing the corporate ladder had always been a goal, but now she was questioning if it was the right path for her. She pulled out her phone and opened the messages from Tasha. Her friend's words echoed in her mind, "Something big is coming your way, I can feel it." Was this the big moment? Or was there something else waiting for her? She felt torn. This position could change everything, her career, her future. But she also knew that with it would come more responsibilities, more pressure, and more time spent in the office. Maya had worked so hard to find balance in her life, to make sure she wasn't losing herself in the chaos of work, and she wasn't sure if this role would allow her to maintain that. A knock on the door broke her thoughts, and Maya quickly wiped away a stray tear that had formed as she wrestled with the uncertainty. "Come in," she called, clearing her throat. It was Tasha. She stepped into the office, a familiar mischievous grin on her face. "You look deep in thought," Tasha said, flopping into the chair across from Maya's desk. "What's going on?" Maya shook her head, unable to hide the conflicted look on her face. "It's this offer. I don't know what to do. Mr. Lawson offered me the senior position, but I'm not sure if it's the right move for me. I mean, it's everything I've worked for, but I don't know if it's really what I want anymore." Tasha's smile faded, and she leaned forward, her voice sincere. "Maya, you've always known what you wanted. Maybe you just need to take a step back and think about what you need, not what anyone else expects from you. You've been pushing for this for so long, but have you ever asked yourself if you're doing it for the right reasons?" Maya let out a deep breath, her fingers tapping nervously on the desk. "I don't know. I used to think it was about proving something, to everyone around me, to my parents, to myself. But now, I'm starting to wonder if I'm chasing a dream that was never really mine in the first place." Tasha nodded knowingly. "I get it. It's so easy to get caught up in the grind, especially when everyone around you is hustling for that next big thing. But you don't have to make a decision based on what you think you should do. You're in a place now where you can think about what you really want. What will make you happy?" Maya paused, letting Tasha's words sink in. She was right. For so long, she had defined success through the lens of others, through promotions, titles, and validation. But now, she was starting to see that true fulfillment came from within. The feeling of being proud of her own choices, of living authentically, mattered more than any title ever could. "I don't know if I can just turn down this opportunity," Maya said quietly. "What if it's the only chance I get to prove myself?" Tasha smiled softly, her eyes filled with empathy. "You've already proven yourself, Maya. You've come so far. But if you say yes to this position and it makes you unhappy, then what? Is it worth it?" Maya sat in silence, the weight of Tasha's question heavy on her heart. She had worked so hard for this moment, but now, the idea of taking the next step in her career felt like it might be the wrong path to walk. "I need time to think," Maya said finally, her voice more certain now. "I don't want to make a decision I'll regret later." Tasha nodded. "Take all the time you need, girl. But just remember, you're not obligated to take this job because of what other people expect. Your happiness, your peace of mind, that's what matters most." As Tasha left the room, Maya felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The decision wasn't easy, but it was hers to make. She didn't need to rush. She could take the time to figure out what was truly best for her. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was standing at a crossroads, not one she needed to fear, but one that offered her the power of choice. She looked at the letter once more, then slowly set it aside. There would be time to decide. But for now, Maya needed to take a step back and reconnect with herself. She needed to remember who she was outside of her job, outside of everyone else's expectations. That evening, Maya took a walk through the city, letting the cool air clear her mind. The noise of the streets, the bustle of the people, everything felt distant as she lost herself in thought. What did she really want? What would bring her true happiness? She had been so focused on the future, on achieving the next thing, that she had lost sight of what brought her peace in the present. She didn't need to rush. She didn't need to settle for a version of success that didn't resonate with her anymore. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the city, Maya felt a shift. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. She just had to trust herself. Trust that whatever decision she made, it would be the right one for her. And in that moment, she realized that was the most important thing she could do for herself. Maya's days since the offer had been a whirlwind. She had taken Tasha's advice to heart, giving herself the space to reflect and breathe. The weight of the decision still hung in the air, but she was determined to find clarity. The hustle of her daily life continued, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting just around the corner, something that could offer the answer she was searching for. Stepping into the coffee shop, she was greeted by the familiar scent of freshly brewed espresso. The cozy atmosphere was a welcome escape from the noise of the office, and Maya always found solace in the quiet corner by the window. She loved watching the world go by, lost in her thoughts, finding peace in the simple moments. As she ordered her usual, a caramel macchiato with a dash of cinnamon, she noticed a man sitting by the counter. He was reading a book, a thick novel that seemed to consume him completely. His presence was unremarkable, yet something about him stood out in the sea of customers. He was dressed casually, a light blue shirt and khaki pants, with tousled dark hair that hinted at the hint of an artist's soul. Maya tried not to stare, but her curiosity got the better of her. She made her way to her usual seat by the window, but as she passed him, their eyes met for a fleeting moment. Something about his gaze was warm, almost like a silent invitation to connect. Maya felt a strange pull, but she quickly turned her attention back to her phone, trying to dismiss the thought. Minutes later, Maya's mind was still racing with the decision about the promotion. She was leaning toward turning it down, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. She wanted something more fulfilling, something that would allow her to live authentically. But what if she was just scared of the responsibility? The man at the counter cleared his throat, breaking her thoughts. "Excuse me, I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his voice calm and pleasant. "I couldn't help but notice you sitting here all alone. Would you mind if I joined you?" Maya hesitated for a moment, unsure if she wanted to engage with a stranger. But there was something about his gentle demeanor that made her feel at ease. Maybe a little distraction would help. "Sure, why not?" she replied, offering a polite smile. He smiled back and walked over, taking the seat across from her. His energy was laid back, not rushed or anxious like most people Maya encountered during her busy days. He gave her a small nod, as if inviting her to speak first. "Are you sure I'm not interrupting?" "I don't mean to intrude," he said, his voice soft but sincere. Maya shook her head. "No, you're not interrupting. It's just one of those days where my mind is all over the place." "Well, I can relate to that. Sometimes, I think the best way to clear your head is to get out of your routine," he said with a thoughtful expression. "What brings you here today?" Maya chuckled softly. "Just needed a break from the madness. Sometimes a good coffee and a little quiet time is all it takes." He nodded, glancing down at his book. "I know what you mean. There's something about getting lost in a good book, but honestly, it's nice to talk to someone every once in a while." They sat there for a moment, the conversation flowing naturally between them. Maya found herself relaxing, her earlier tension fading away with each passing minute. There was something refreshing about his presence, something that allowed her to take a step back from the weight of her decision and simply enjoy the moment. "So, what brings you to this corner of the world?" Maya asked, leaning back in her chair, the curiosity in her voice now genuine. "You seem like someone who doesn't mind a little quiet." "I guess you could say I'm trying to figure things out, too," he said, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto hers. "We all go through phases in life where we need to reevaluate. I've been doing a lot of thinking myself." Maya paused, intrigued. "What are you thinking about?" He smiled faintly, then shrugged. "The usual stuff. Career, relationships, where I want to be in 5 years. Sometimes, it feels like everything is moving so fast, but I'm trying to focus on what I actually want out of life." Maya's heart skipped a beat as she realized how closely his words mirrored her own thoughts. The exact questions that had been plaguing her for weeks were the same ones he was grappling with. For a moment, it was as if the universe had aligned them in this coffee shop at just the right time. "I know exactly what you mean," Maya replied, her voice quieter now. "I've been given an opportunity at work, but I'm not sure if it's what I truly want anymore. I've spent so much of my life trying to prove myself, but now, I don't know if chasing promotions and titles is what will actually make me happy." He listened intently, not interrupting, just absorbing her words. His gaze was kind and understanding. When she finished, he leaned forward slightly. You know, he said thoughtfully, sometimes, we get so caught up in what we think we're supposed to do, we forget to ask ourselves if we're doing it for the right reasons. If you're constantly chasing something external, you may end up losing sight of what truly makes you happy. Maya felt a strange sense of comfort in his words. That's exactly how I feel. But it's hard to just walk away from something that everyone says is a huge opportunity. The man smiled gently. You don't have to walk away from anything. But sometimes, it helps to take a step back and ask yourself, what does your future look like? Not the future that others envision for you, but the one you want to create for yourself. Maya let the words sink in. She had been so focused on the practicalities, the logistics of her decision, that she had forgotten to look inward. The truth was, she didn't know what her future looked like anymore. But in that moment, sitting across from this stranger, she realized that maybe it was okay not to have all the answers. She smiled softly. Thank you, she said. I needed to hear that. The man nodded. Anytime. As Maya left the coffee shop later that evening, her mind felt clearer. She had met a stranger who had unwittingly given her the insight she had been looking for. The next step wasn't about taking the job or turning it down, it was about defining what she wanted in her life, for herself, not for anyone else. It was a new kind of clarity, one that came from slowing down, listening, and trusting her own heart. The week after her encounter at the coffee shop passed in a blur. Maya had walked away from that conversation with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't that the decision was suddenly clear, it wasn't, but the pressure of having to decide had lifted, replaced by a calm understanding that there was time, that she didn't have to rush. Every morning, she woke up with a new sense of purpose, even as the same work demands piled up around her. But in the quiet moments between her meetings and emails, she began to make space for the idea of what she truly wanted. No longer did she feel like she had to prove herself to anyone. The idea of happiness, of living authentically, became a recurring theme in her thoughts. As she sat at her desk that Friday morning, her fingers hovered over the keyboard. There was an email she needed to send, one to Mr. Lawson, telling him her decision about the senior position. Maya had been drafting the message in her head all week, but now that the time had come to actually write it down, she was filled with uncertainty. Would he be disappointed? Would they see her as weak for turning down a high-ranking position? Maya sighed and looked out the window of her office. The view was the same, a busy cityscape, people rushing to and fro, cars honking, the hum of daily life. But in the midst of all the noise, Maya felt quieter than ever. She was still unsure, still grappling with the fear of making the wrong choice. Her phone buzzed on her desk, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a text from Tasha. Tasha, what are you waiting for? You know you don't have to choose the path you think everyone wants you to. I'm here if you need me. Maya smiled at the message. Tasha always knew what to say, even when Maya wasn't sure herself. With a deep breath, Maya clicked open her email to Mr. Lawson. Subject, Senior Position Decision. Dear Mr. Lawson. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude for the offer to join the senior leadership team. This is a significant opportunity, and I am honored that you considered me for this role. After much reflection, I've come to the decision to respectfully decline the offer. This was not an easy choice, as I have a deep appreciation for the work we've done together and the growth I've experienced at this company. However, I've realized that I need to focus on other aspects of my personal and professional life that align with my long-term goals. I hope this decision doesn't cause any inconvenience, and I look forward to continuing my work with the team in my current capacity. Thank you once again for your support and understanding. Sincerely. Maya Carter. She sat back and reread the email. It felt right. It wasn't just about turning down the promotion, it was about affirming that her happiness wasn't tied to any particular job title. Maya had spent too many years defining herself by external expectations, and now, she was defining herself by her own values. She clicked send, then leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. The release of tension felt almost physical. A few seconds later, an email notification pinged. It was from Mr. Lawson. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. Subject, Senior Position Decision. Dear Maya. Thank you for your honesty and for your thoughtful decision. While I am disappointed, I respect your choice, and I appreciate the hard work and dedication you've shown to the company. I understand your desire to focus on other aspects of your life, and I fully support your decision. We are lucky to have you on the team, and I look forward to continuing our work together. Best regards. David Lawson. Maya read the email twice. It wasn't the response she had feared. There was no judgment, no disappointment. Just respect and understanding. It felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She took a deep breath and stood up from her desk. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was finally in control of her life. Her decision wasn't about rejecting opportunity, it was about embracing the freedom to choose the path that felt right for her, even if it wasn't the expected one. With her decision made, Maya stepped into the weekend with a newfound sense of freedom. She hadn't just walked away from a job offer, she had walked away from the pressure to be something she wasn't. She could now focus on what mattered most, her well-being, her relationships, and the life she truly wanted to build. On Saturday morning, Maya met Tasha for brunch. They sat in a cozy cafe, sipping mimosas and laughing about the little things that had made their week. Maya was in a good place, and for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace with her choices. I did it, Maya said, her voice soft but full of conviction. I turned it down. The senior position. I told him no. Tasha's eyes widened, then she broke into a huge grin. I knew you would. You've been ready for this moment all along, Maya. Maya smiled, a sense of relief flooding over her. It feels good, Tasha. It feels like the right decision, even though it's scary. But I'm not afraid anymore. Tasha reached across the table, giving Maya's hand a reassuring squeeze. You're stronger than you know. And now, you get to decide what comes next, on your own terms. No more pressure. Just you, your dreams, and whatever comes after. They sat there for a while, talking and laughing, letting the warmth of the cafe wrap around them. Maya felt a quiet excitement stir inside her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. The weekend that followed her decision to turn down the promotion was filled with a surprising sense of calm. Maya had expected to feel anxious or second-guess herself, but instead, she found herself immersed in a sense of peace she hadn't realized she was missing. It was as though a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders, and she was breathing for the first time in a long while. She spent Sunday morning walking through a park near her apartment, enjoying the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant sound of children playing. The simple act of being outside, in the fresh air, felt liberating. She hadn't made time for these small joys in months, maybe even years. As she walked, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out to see a message from her mother, which wasn't unusual, but the content made her heart race a little. Mom, sweetheart, I hope you're doing well. I heard from Aunt Clara that you turned down the promotion at work. I just want to make sure you're okay. It's a big decision. Let's talk soon. Maya paused, looking at the message. Her mother was supportive, but she knew this wasn't just about the promotion. It was about her choices in general. Her mom, like so many people, had always seen Maya as someone destined for success. To turn down such a big opportunity could be hard to understand from the outside, especially when Maya's family had always emphasized the importance of career success. Maya wasn't sure how to respond. She wanted her mom to understand that this wasn't a failure or a rejection of success. But how could she explain something so intangible, something that had only begun to make sense to her over the last few weeks? She took a deep breath and typed a response. Maya, hey, Mom. Thanks for checking in. I'm doing okay. I just realized I wasn't sure the senior position was the right fit for me anymore. It's a big decision, but I think it's the best one for my future. I'll call you later this week to talk more. She put the phone down, feeling a little better after sending the message. There was no rush to explain everything right now. Her mother would understand when Maya was ready to explain the deeper reasons behind her decision. The important thing was that Maya had made her own choice, and it felt right. As the days went by, Maya continued to settle into the new rhythm of her life. She had been able to cut down on the long hours at the office, spending more time at home or in the company of friends. She rediscovered hobbies she had long neglected, like painting and journaling. There was a sense of rediscovery, of reorienting herself toward things that brought her joy, not just accomplishment. One evening, as she sat down to write in her journal, she realized something profound: she wasn't just avoiding a promotion. She was moving toward something bigger, a life that was not based on external validation, but on the pursuit of what made her soul feel alive. She wasn't running from success, she was choosing a different kind of success, a life that was meaningful, authentic, and full of growth. The next day, at work, she felt more present. Instead of the rush to prove herself, she found herself engaged in her projects, focusing on the work itself rather than the "what's next." And to her surprise, her coworkers noticed the shift. "Hey, Maya," Peter from marketing said one afternoon, poking his head into her office. "I couldn't help but notice how much more grounded you seem lately. You've been here for a few years now, but I feel like I'm seeing a whole new side of you. Everything okay?" Maya smiled, a little surprised by the compliment. "Yeah, everything's great. Just taking it one day at a time." Peter looked thoughtful. "I don't know what it is, but it's like you've shed some of the weight you've been carrying around. You seem happier, more focused." It was a simple observation, but Maya felt its significance. This shift in her life was already visible to those around her, even if she hadn't fully realized it. Her decision to step away from the fast track had made her more present in her own life, and that authenticity was showing in her work and her relationships. Over the next few weeks, Maya's inner calm continued to grow. It wasn't always easy. She still had moments of doubt, times when she wondered if she had made the right call. The world around her still operated on the principle of achievement and climbing the ladder. But Maya was no longer measuring her worth by the same yardstick. She was focused on what truly mattered. One evening, as she sat at dinner with Tasha, Maya confessed something that had been weighing on her for the past few weeks. "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm going against the grain. Like, I'm not following the script. Everyone around me seems so sure of their paths, and here I am, still figuring it out." Tasha placed her fork down and looked at her, her eyes full of understanding. "Maya, that's the thing. There's no script. People like to act like there's a one-size-fits-all path, but everyone's journey is different. You're doing exactly what you need to do for you, and that's what matters. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're doing it wrong just because it's not the same as theirs." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of her friend's words. She had always known that Tasha was wise, but today, her insight felt particularly comforting. "You're right," Maya said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm not running away from anything, I'm just choosing to live differently. It's hard sometimes, but I feel like it's the right choice for me." Tasha smiled warmly. "And that's all that matters." The following week, Maya received a phone call from her mother. It was long overdue, and Maya knew this conversation would be more than just a check-in. As she listened to her mom's voice, warm and familiar, Maya realized that the conversation she'd been putting off wasn't so intimidating after all. "Hey, Mom," Maya said, sitting down on her couch with a cup of tea. "How are you?" "I'm good, sweetheart," her mother replied. "But I've been thinking about your email. I wanted to check in and make sure you're okay with your decision. I know it's a big one." Maya smiled softly, feeling the love in her mother's tone. "Yeah, I'm okay. I think I'm exactly where I need to be." Her mother paused, clearly processing her words. "I know you've always been ambitious, Maya. And I'm proud of you for all that you've accomplished. But I also know you've always been a little more introspective than most. If you feel like this is what's right for you, then I trust you." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. The support she had longed for was finally here, and it filled her heart with gratitude. "Thanks, Mom," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means a lot to hear you say that." Her mother's voice softened. "I just want you to be happy. And if you're at peace with your decision, then that's all I could ever ask for." Maya's heart swelled with love. She hadn't expected her mom to fully understand at first, but hearing her words gave Maya the reassurance she needed. This wasn't about anyone else's expectations, it was about her own journey, her own happiness. She knew she was on the right path. The days that followed Maya's deep conversations with Tasha and her mother felt transformative. It was as if the universe had opened a window, allowing the fresh air of new possibilities to rush in. Maya felt lighter than she had in years, her mind no longer clouded with doubt or the constant pressure to live up to other people's expectations. She had made peace with the path she was on, and in doing so, she felt more aligned with her true self than ever before. One Thursday afternoon, as Maya sipped her tea at her kitchen table, an idea struck her, one that felt completely in tune with her newfound clarity. She had always been passionate about community development, something that had started as a small hobby in her early 20s. Over the years, she'd used her leadership skills to mentor young women in her neighborhood, guiding them through challenges like building self-confidence, finding their own voices, and navigating professional hurdles. It had always been something that brought her joy, but it had always been on the back burner, part of her one-day list. But now, with the weight of her previous decisions lifted, Maya realized that one day could be today. The idea came to her like a sudden revelation: why not turn her passion into something more formal, something that could make a real impact? She thought about creating a program, a mentorship initiative specifically focused on helping young women of color break barriers in their careers, gain confidence, and thrive in environments where they had often been overlooked. Her heart raced as she thought of the possibilities. Maya had always known that there was more to life than just climbing the corporate ladder. She'd had the privilege of navigating the world of business, but she had also experienced firsthand the challenges that women of color faced in the workplace. This was an opportunity to create something meaningful, a chance to empower others who had been in her shoes not too long ago. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. She grabbed her journal and began to write down her ideas, the framework for the program, the skills she wanted to teach, the ways she could connect with local businesses and organizations to provide resources and mentorship. It felt right, and it felt big. By the end of the evening, Maya had an outline for what she wanted to accomplish. She wasn't sure where to start, but she was certain of one thing: this was going to be the next chapter in her life, and it was going to be something she built from the ground up. The next morning, Maya took her ideas to Tasha. They met at their favorite cafe, and Maya couldn't contain her excitement. "Tasha, I've got this idea, something I've been thinking about for a while now," Maya began, her eyes sparkling. "I want to start a mentorship program. I want to help young women of color who are navigating their careers, give them the tools and support I didn't have when I was starting out. I want to create a community where they can thrive, where they know they belong." Tasha leaned forward, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. "That's incredible, Maya. You've got so much wisdom and experience. You've been through it, and you're in a unique position to help others. I think this could be huge." Maya smiled, grateful for Tasha's unwavering support. "I'm scared, though. I've never done anything like this before. I don't even know where to start." Tasha placed a hand on hers, reassuringly. "You've already taken the hardest step, Maya. You've got the heart for it, and you're doing it for the right reasons. Just start small, find one person to mentor, and let it grow from there. You'll figure it out as you go, but you've already got the foundation. Maya nodded, feeling more confident with each word. She had always admired Tasha's ability to look at any challenge and see it as an opportunity, and today, that energy was exactly what she needed. Over the next few weeks, Maya worked tirelessly on developing the mentorship program. She reached out to local community organizations, connected with women who had similar passions, and even spent hours researching how to structure a mentorship program that was both sustainable and impactful. She drafted a mission statement, outlining the goals of the program: to empower young women, to provide them with the resources they needed to succeed, and to create a network of support that would last long after the program ended. Maya also started reaching out to companies, asking them to provide resources, whether it was offering internships, hosting workshops, or simply mentoring the participants. To her delight, many were eager to get involved, understanding the value of investing in the next generation of leaders. As the program began to take shape, Maya felt a growing sense of pride. It was no longer just an idea, it was becoming something real, something tangible that would have a lasting impact on the lives of so many young women. One evening, while Maya was working on the program's website, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Mr. Lawson, her former boss. Subject: checking in. Dear Maya, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to reach out and see how things have been going since you made your decision about the senior position. We've certainly missed having you on the leadership team, but I respect your choice. If you're open to it, I'd love to grab a coffee sometime and catch up. I also wanted to mention that we are starting a new initiative focused on diversity and inclusion at the company, and I thought you might be interested in being involved. Let me know if this is something you'd be open to. Best regards. David Lawson. Maya read the email twice, then smiled. She wasn't sure what she had expected from Mr. Lawson, but this wasn't it. It felt like an opportunity, a new door opening, just as she was starting her own project. The thought of getting involved in a diversity initiative at the company was intriguing, especially since it aligned with her values and the work she was now doing in the community. She quickly typed a response. Subject: checking in. Dear Mr. Lawson, thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate your kind words and the opportunity to reconnect. I've been doing well and focusing on some personal projects that I'm very passionate about. I'm definitely open to meeting up and catching up. As for the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative, that sounds like something I would love to be involved in. It aligns closely with my current work, and I think there's a lot of potential for collaboration. Let me know when you're free to meet. Best regards. Maya Carter. Maya hit send and sat back, contemplating what this new connection could mean. She wasn't sure where this would lead, but she was open to the possibilities. It felt good to know that the work she was doing outside of the company was resonating with others, including people like Mr. Lawson, who had been a mentor to her in her corporate life. The idea of balancing her new mentorship initiative with potential corporate partnerships was exciting. It was another layer to the life she was building, one where she could continue to grow and contribute, but in a way that felt authentic and true to her values. As the days went by, Maya felt herself settling more comfortably into her new rhythm. She was no longer driven by fear of missing out on traditional success. Instead, she was driven by the desire to create something that would have a lasting impact, something that would uplift others in the same way that she had been uplifted over the years. She wasn't just carving a new path for herself, she was opening doors for others to follow. Maya had been working tirelessly on her mentorship program, but the days began to blur together as she juggled the tasks of building a new initiative from the ground up. She had spent countless hours networking, reaching out to young women in her community, and developing partnerships with local organizations and businesses. There were moments of self-doubt, times when she wondered if she was taking on too much or whether the program would actually make the difference she hoped for. But every time those doubts crept in, she reminded herself of why she started this journey in the first place, to make a tangible impact on the lives of young women who had been overlooked, underestimated, and underrepresented. Her hard work was paying off. By the end of the month, Maya had secured a venue for the first community workshop, a local cafe that was known for hosting events and supporting small businesses. The space was intimate yet open, the perfect environment for the young women she wanted to reach. She was ready. The day of the first workshop arrived, and Maya woke up early, nervous but excited. She dressed in a simple yet professional outfit, a tailored blazer and black jeans, comfortable yet polished. She wanted to set the tone for the women who would be attending, showing them that they could be both powerful and approachable, successful and true to themselves. She grabbed her notebook, full of the lessons and materials she had carefully put together for the workshop, and made her way to the cafe. When she arrived, the small but cozy venue was already buzzing with activity. Maya could see that the cafe staff had set up a circle of chairs in the middle of the room, with tables nearby for refreshments. She smiled at the thought of what she had envisioned coming to life. It was a small beginning, but it was a beginning. Her first participant arrived just as she was setting up her materials. Maya's nerves started to settle as she introduced herself. Her name was Tia, and she was a recent college graduate trying to find her footing in the corporate world. Tia was bubbly and enthusiastic, and Maya could immediately see the spark of ambition in her eyes. Over the next half hour, more women began to arrive, each with their own story, their own struggles, and their own dreams. There was Jamila, a young woman who had worked in retail for years but had always dreamed of pursuing a career in marketing, Natalie, a single mother working 2 jobs and trying to find a way to build a career while raising her child, and Kira, a recent immigrant who had faced cultural barriers in finding professional opportunities. Each woman had a unique story, but there was one common thread that ran through them all: they had dreams, but they didn't always know how to make them a reality. As the workshop began, Maya introduced herself and shared her journey, the struggles she faced as a young woman of color trying to navigate corporate spaces and the pivotal moment when she chose to step away from the traditional path to pursue something more fulfilling. She spoke honestly about her challenges and triumphs, hoping to give these women permission to do the same. "I want you all to know that your dreams are valid," Maya said, standing in front of the group, her voice steady but passionate. "You don't need anyone's permission to go after what you want. You just need to believe in yourself, even when the world doesn't make it easy. This space is here for you to grow, to learn, and to support each other as you navigate your careers and your lives." She could see the women in the room nodding, their faces lighting up with understanding. They were hungry for guidance, for affirmation that their dreams were worth pursuing. Maya spent the next 2 hours leading the group through exercises on building confidence, setting goals, and crafting an action plan. She encouraged them to identify their strengths and to use those strengths to create opportunities, no matter how small they might seem. "What's one thing you're afraid of?" Maya asked the group, her voice gentle yet firm. "Now, what if that fear wasn't as big as you thought? What if the thing holding you back is not your lack of ability, but your lack of belief in yourself?" The conversation that followed was raw and vulnerable. Women opened up about their fears of failure, the pressure to conform to societal expectations, and the challenges they faced simply because they didn't see many people who looked like them in positions of power. Maya could feel the weight of their stories, but she also saw the strength in their voices, the determination in their eyes. By the end of the session, Maya was exhausted, but in the best way. She had given everything she had to these women, and she could feel the energy in the room shift. There was a newfound sense of possibility among them, an unspoken agreement that they would support each other, uplift each other, and celebrate each other's wins along the way. After the workshop ended, Maya stayed behind to talk to some of the women. Tia approached her first, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "This was amazing," Tia said, her voice full of gratitude. "I didn't realize how much I needed this until today. You've given me a new perspective on my career. I'm actually going to apply for that marketing internship I've been thinking about, something I would have never done before." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "That's exactly what I want to hear. You've got this, Tia." One by one, the women shared similar stories of newfound confidence. They expressed how much the workshop had meant to them, how it had given them the tools and mindset to take action toward their goals. Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was just the beginning, but it was clear that the work she was doing had already made an impact. As she packed up her materials, she noticed Kira lingering near the door, hesitant. Maya walked over to her. "You okay?" Maya asked softly. Kira nodded but then hesitated. I've always felt like I didn't belong. Like no one would take me seriously because of where I'm from and the way I speak. But hearing you today made me realize that maybe I'm just as worthy as anyone else. Maybe I don't have to apologize for who I am." Maya's heart ached at the raw honesty in Kira's voice. "You don't have to apologize for who you are. You're exactly where you're meant to be. You have everything it takes to succeed. Don't ever let anyone tell you differently." Kira smiled, her eyes shining with newfound hope. "Thank you." As Maya watched the women leave, she felt a profound sense of purpose settle in her chest. This was why she had made the decision to walk away from the corporate path, to create something that would leave a lasting impact, to build a community of women who could empower and uplift each other. It was only the beginning, but already, she could feel the ripples of change spreading. Maya's mentorship program was beginning to take off in ways she hadn't expected. The success of the first workshop had created a buzz, and word spread quickly through the community. The next few weeks were filled with excitement as more women signed up, eager to take part in the program. It felt like the spark had ignited a fire. What started as a small idea in her living room was rapidly growing into something bigger than Maya had ever imagined. As the weeks passed, Maya continued to host workshops, each one building on the last. She had formed an incredible network of women who not only supported each other but also gave back to the program, sharing their knowledge, skills, and stories. There was something magical about the way the group came together, women from all walks of life, different ages, backgrounds, and experiences, all united by a common goal of personal and professional growth. One of the most profound changes Maya noticed was in herself. Every time a woman shared a victory, whether it was landing an interview for a dream job, starting a side hustle, or simply learning to set boundaries, Maya felt a surge of pride. She was more than just a mentor, she was a part of something much larger, something that was changing lives and creating opportunities for women who had often been overlooked. One day, as Maya was walking through the local community center where the next workshop was going to be held, her phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. "Tasha, hey, I saw something amazing today. Check your email." Curious, Maya quickly opened her inbox and found a message from an unfamiliar source. It was from a large corporate foundation that focused on diversity and empowerment programs. She read the email twice to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Subject: Partnership Opportunity, Empowering Women of Color. Dear Maya Carter, I hope this message finds you well. My name is Olivia Taylor, and I'm the Program Director at the Empowerment Initiative, a foundation dedicated to creating opportunities for marginalized communities, particularly women of color. We recently came across your mentorship program, and we were deeply impressed by the work you're doing in your community. We believe that your program aligns perfectly with our mission, and we would love to discuss the possibility of a partnership. We are interested in providing funding and resources to support your efforts and help scale your impact. Our foundation has the capacity to offer financial support, mentorship, and corporate partnerships that could benefit both you and the women you work with. If this is something you would be open to exploring, we would love to set up a meeting to discuss the details. Looking forward to hearing from you. Best regards. Olivia Taylor, Program Director, Empowerment Initiative. Maya's heart raced as she read the email again. It was exactly what she needed, the kind of partnership that could propel her program to the next level. She thought about the women who had come to her for guidance, the ones who had opened up about their struggles and dreams. Now, there was an opportunity to provide them with even more resources, to help them push through the barriers they faced. Maya immediately texted Tasha. Maya, Tasha, you will not believe this. I just got an email from a corporate foundation. They want to partner with us. They want to fund the program and offer resources. Tasha, are you serious? This is huge. You've been working so hard, Maya. You deserve this. Maya felt a rush of excitement, mixed with a bit of nervousness. This wasn't just a small partnership, it was a chance to elevate her program, to reach more women and give them the tools they needed to thrive. She quickly drafted a response to Olivia's email, agreeing to meet and discuss the opportunity. Subject: Partnership Opportunity, Empowering Women of Color. Dear Olivia, thank you so much for reaching out and for your kind words. I am thrilled to hear that the Empowerment Initiative is interested in partnering with my mentorship program. The work we've been doing has been incredibly rewarding, and the potential to expand with the support of your foundation is both exciting and humbling. I would be delighted to set up a meeting to discuss how we can collaborate and explore the ways in which we can work together to support the women we serve. Please let me know your availability for a call or in-person meeting. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Best regards. Maya Carter. Maya hit send, and within minutes, Olivia replied with available times for a meeting. They scheduled a call for the following week, and Maya felt a mix of anticipation and gratitude. She had always believed in the power of community. Now, that belief was being validated in ways she hadn't imagined. Over the next few days, Maya spent time preparing for the meeting. She reviewed the growth of her mentorship program, the testimonials from women who had participated, and the partnerships she had already built with local organizations. She knew that this was a critical moment, a chance to secure the future of her program and expand its impact. As the meeting day approached, Maya felt the weight of what was at stake. She wasn't just advocating for her own success, she was advocating for the success of the women who depended on the program, for the young women who needed someone to believe in them, just as Maya had once needed someone to believe in her. When the call finally came, Maya was ready. Olivia greeted her warmly, and they quickly got down to business. Maya shared the story of how the program had started, the challenges she had faced, and the victories she had witnessed. She spoke passionately about the women whose lives had already been changed, and how the program had become a lifeline for so many who were looking for guidance and support. Olivia listened intently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. When Maya finished, there was a brief silence before Olivia spoke. Maya, I'm genuinely impressed by what you've accomplished with so little. Your dedication is clear, and the impact you're having is undeniable. We'd be thrilled to partner with you. Maya's breath caught in her throat. You're serious? I am. We believe in the vision you have for this program, and we want to help make it a reality on a larger scale. Let's talk specifics. The partnership between Maya's mentorship program and the Empowerment Initiative became official in the weeks that followed. Funding, resources, and mentorship were provided, allowing Maya to expand the program and offer more opportunities to the women who needed it. As the program grew, so did the ripple effect. More women were empowered, more lives were changed, and Maya knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had come a long way from that moment in the dealership parking lot when everything felt uncertain. Now, Maya was not just helping others find their path, she had found her own. Maya sat in her office, a modest but welcoming space filled with motivational quotes, artwork created by the women from her mentorship program, and photos from the workshops and events she had organized over the past few months. She had just come from a meeting with the Empowerment Initiative, and her mind was buzzing with possibilities. What once felt like a small, personal mission to empower women of color had now evolved into a full-fledged program with national recognition and support. The partnership with the Empowerment Initiative had allowed Maya to take the mentorship program to new heights. Not only did the funding provide resources to expand the workshops, but the Foundation's mentorship connections also opened doors to professional networks that Maya could never have imagined when she started. She had even begun offering virtual workshops to reach women in other states, something that felt unimaginable just a year ago. But Maya wasn't done yet. She had bigger plans, and the work was far from over. She had learned early on that no matter how much success she achieved, there would always be new challenges to face and more women to support. As she gazed out of the window of her office, she thought about how far she had come. It seemed like just yesterday she had been kicked out of that car dealership, feeling humiliated and uncertain about her future. Now, she was the one creating opportunities for others, guiding women through their own personal and professional struggles. She had turned that moment of rejection into a fuel that propelled her toward success. It had been a long journey. Maya thought back to the women who had made up the core of her first group, the TIAs, the Kiras, the Natalies. They were now working in fields they had once only dreamed of, their confidence shining through in everything they did. She remembered their stories of fear, doubt, and uncertainty, and how those same women had blossomed into leaders in their own right. That, more than anything, was the greatest reward. She hadn't just created a program, she had helped create a sisterhood. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Tasha. "Tasha, Maya, I have something to tell you. Are you free for a quick call?" Maya smiled, her heart warming. She had been so focused on the business side of things lately that she hadn't had as much time to connect with her close circle of friends. Tasha had been there from the beginning, helping her with everything from the early brainstorming sessions to the late-night phone calls where Maya doubted her ability to make the program work. "Maya, of course. Give me a call when you can." A few minutes later, Tasha's name appeared on the screen. Maya answered with a smile. "Hey, Tasha. What's up?" "Maya, you're not going to believe this," Tasha said, her voice filled with excitement. Maya's curiosity piqued. "What happened? Remember that company you've been talking to about partnering with your program? The one with the mentorship platform for women in tech. They just sent you an offer. They want to sponsor a scholarship fund for women in your program who are interested in pursuing tech careers. It's huge, Maya. This could change everything." Maya felt her heart skip a beat. "Wait, are you serious? A scholarship fund? For tech careers?" "Yes. They're offering a full scholarship for a coding boot camp, mentorship from women in the tech field, and even internship placements for those who graduate from the program. It's exactly the kind of support these women need to break into the tech industry." Maya's mind raced. Tech had always been a field that felt out of reach for many of the women in her program, an industry dominated by men, where women of color were even rarer. She knew that this partnership could open up new opportunities and inspire a whole new generation of women to pursue careers in tech. "That's incredible," Maya said, her voice filled with awe. "This could change everything for them. For all of us." Tasha laughed. "I know, right? You've been doing the work for so long, and now everything is starting to fall into place. You're not just changing lives locally, Maya. You're changing lives everywhere." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. The road had been long, and there had been times when she wasn't sure if the hard work would ever pay off. But now, with this new partnership, she could see the fruits of her labor. This was the kind of impact she had always dreamed of. "I can't do this without you, Tasha," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've been with me every step of the way, and I'll never be able to thank you enough." Tasha's voice softened. "You don't have to thank me, Maya. This is your vision. I'm just lucky to be part of it." Maya smiled. "I'm lucky to have you in my corner." They talked for a few more minutes, brainstorming ideas for how to introduce the scholarship program to the women in the group. Maya couldn't wait to share the news with them. She could already picture the looks on their faces when they realized that, for the first time, the tech industry wasn't just a far-off dream. It was an opportunity within reach. As the conversation ended, Maya hung up the phone and leaned back in her chair. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of everything that had happened sink in. She had come full circle. What started with a dream, a rejection, and a feeling of inadequacy had turned into something powerful, something life-changing. She thought about how she had once been on the receiving end of someone's judgment, kicked out of the dealership, dismissed as not worthy of the opportunity. But now, she was the one creating those opportunities for others. She had built something lasting, something that would continue to grow long after she was gone. She had created a legacy. Maya stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the buildings. She felt a sense of peace settle over her. This wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning. And the best part? She didn't have to walk this journey alone. She had her community, her sisters, and together, they were going to keep pushing forward, breaking barriers, and making dreams come true. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?